Now let's have a few words about our first speaker. So we will have Mike Carducci from Denver, Colorado, and get ready for a captivating session on digital knowledge management for individuals and teams. Our speaker, Michael Carducci, is a 25-year IT veteran software architect and author of the upcoming book, Mastering Software Architecture. Michael is also a renowned magician and mentalist, known for transforming complex concepts into engaging stories. Today, he will guide us through digital knowledge management, workflows, and tools to help us build a second brain for better information capture, organization, and sharing. I asked him the question, what is the key takeaway for the future developers? And he said, beware novelty bias. What is new is not better all the time. So please welcome on stage with a huge applause, Michael Carducci.
Hey, thank you so much. Good morning, Craft Conference. I am so delighted to be here with you, and we are going to be introducing a topic here that has been truly transformational for me, and I hope that you get the same kind of experience out of it. Of course, we are talking about digital knowledge management, personal knowledge management. I'm going to introduce, in the very short time that we have, I want to give you basically the idea, this idea of a minimum effective dose. Given the limited time we have, I want to give you just enough information to get started. So we're not going to go breadth first. We're not even going to go depth first. I just want to get you started on this journey, and I hope that it has the same kind of impact in your life, in your career, in your well-being than it has for me. And of course, given we have a short amount of time, and this is a very deep topic, it is a very broad topic, I would welcome you to continue the discussion. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. These are topics that I love to talk about, I love to collaborate on, and in fact, there's been a lot of interest in putting together a mastermind group, and so this is something that I would welcome you to join in, keep the questions going, even after the conference, because you are here, and that means that we are family. And I'm going to give just a moment for the last phones to finish scanning. One more. All right, and I think we are ready. And I'm going to break this talk into 3 parts. And I want to start with this idea of personal knowledge management. What is this? And I love this quote from Lyn Wadley. Humans became behaviorally modern the moment they committed to storing abstract information outside of their brains. This is where we're getting into this idea of personal knowledge management. But what is it? It's a mindful, intentionally designed workflow to manage documents, emails, ideas, tasks, and other information that crosses your desk and your mind, and a key component in the modern knowledge worker's toolkit. So personal knowledge management is a systemic approach to acquiring, organizing, storing, and retrieving personal knowledge to enhance productivity, learning, and personal growth. It's a process of collecting information that a person uses to gather, classify, store, search, retrieve, and share knowledge in their daily activities. And it really kind of boils down into 3 stages. It starts with remembering. But we need more than that. We need to do more than just remember these things. We want to start connecting these things. We want to unlock and illuminate these new insights. And we want to use these new insights to create new things, create new value in the world. And that means that we need to do more than just store information. We need to connect it. We need to transform it into something new. And I'm still inspired by a quote from a gentleman by the name of Cliff Stoll. And his words resonate with me every single day. He said, data is not information. Information is not knowledge. Knowledge is not understanding. And understanding is not wisdom. And so much of what we do is we try to capture knowledge. But so seldom do we get what we really want, that value that comes from the understanding and that compounds over time into wisdom. And that connecting piece is key, especially today in the 21st century where the challenges are only getting harder. Nancy Andreasen says, creative people are better at recognizing relationships, making associations, and making those connections. David Epstein wrote a book called Range, which was one of the most influential books that I read, I think, in the year 2021, about why we need breadth and not just depth, and why generalists continue to triumph in a specialized world. And he says this, He says, modern work demands, oh, come on, do the thing. Modern work demands knowledge transfer, the ability to apply knowledge to new situations in different domains. Our most fundamental thought processes have changed to accommodate increasing complexity and the need to derive new patterns rather than rely only on familiar ones. Our conceptual classification schemes provide a scaffolding for connecting knowledge, making it accessible and flexible. Now, thank you so much to our esteemed MC for the introduction. I'm going to do a little more of an introduction. In fact, while I'm doing the introduction, if you wanted to grab that slide, I'll stand here for a moment, let you grab that. I try to watch. And I'm going to do some introductions, and I'm going to start with the classic question, and that question is, to paraphrase the Bobs, what would you say you do here? And I've had a hard time answering this question my whole life. You know, just getting a ride share to the airport. Oh, you're traveling to Budapest. That's so exciting. Is that work or play? Well, I don't see a distinction there. They're kind of the same. Well, what do you do for a living that you travel to all these things? That's a great question. Even my family doesn't know. I think my stepmother asked me recently in a conversation, so how's your work going, Michael? Are you still fixing computers for a living? I guess, technically. But what do? I try to synthesize a lot of information. So I read a lot of books. And I don't just read books. I try to distill that into something that other people can benefit from. So I speak at a lot of conferences. And of course, I don't just read books, I write books. I have a book coming out later this year, Mastering Software Architecture. But I don't just write words, I write code. I spend a lot of time writing code. I try to stay hands-on because as an architect, I don't want to be an ivory tower architect. I don't want to build castles in the air. I want things to be actionable and practical and grounded in reality. But I am also a practicing software architect. I sort of do all of these things and more. I also have a SaaS CRM that I built and that I maintain. I have a lot of things going on. And basically what it boils down to is my job is learning, thinking, and creating all day. And so are you. Right, we are knowledge workers. We are knowledge workers who care deeply about our craft, although I agree with Jessica that what we do is not a craft. We're not house painters. It is not art. It is the next thing after art. I love that quote so much, and I quote it all the time, and I'm glad that you're here, that I can say thank you to you for that. But we are knowledge workers, and it's a lot to keep track of. It is so much that we have to keep track of. You know, really, if we look at it this way, let's see if this works. We will find out.
This is a very complicated case, Maud. You know, a lot of ins, a lot of outs, a lot of what have yous, and a lot of strands to keep in my head, man. You know, a lot of strands in old Duder's head.
A lot of strands to keep in my head, man. And here's the question. How can we do this? We can't. We cannot. We are engineered as human beings to forget. And yet, not only are we designed and engineered and we evolved to forget, we have a very efficient garbage collector in our brain that is operating all the time. And anything we haven't used in a while is gone. Yet, we are drinking from the fire hose, not by choice, but by necessity. And in fact, there are some interesting studies on this. One of them is that the average person's daily consumption of information is 34 gigabytes. Now, this is obviously multimedia information. We're not reading 34 gigabytes of text. That would take a while. If we're looking just at text, there was another study that said that on average, every day, an average human in the developed world is consuming about 174 full newspapers worth of information every single day. Now, a lot of this is information we need, just not yet, just not this second. So how do we get it when we need it? And technology is supposed to help, but the reality is it's only made it worse. I love this infographic, and I'm horrified by this infographic of how much information, how much data we produce every 60 seconds. And it's not a new problem. I mean, if you go all the way back to the 1940s, Vannevar Bush, who was in charge of a lot of the U.S.'s strategic research projects, he started to realize that we are on the verge of an explosion of information, and that is not translating into an explosion in knowledge. And there's a problem. And he said this. He said, we can enormously extend the record, yet even in its present bulk, we can hardly consult it. There may be millions of fine thoughts in the account of the experiences on which they're based, but if the scholar can only get at one a week by diligent search, their syntheses are not likely to keep up with the current scene. Now, we take notes. I take notes. And for a lot of times, the notes that I took on paper. But somehow, the value of what I wrote down was constrained. Now, part of it is, this is my ADD filing system. In other words, there isn't one. I write things down on scraps of paper, and whatever value I get from writing them down, that's about it, because I'm never going to find them again. So I'm hoping that would cement something in my brain. And I hope technology would solve the problem. But as even companies like Google are continuing to discover to this day, search is a super hard problem. And then we start taking notes on computers. And we take the old paradigms and we move them onto the computer. And it still doesn't happen. I was talking to somebody last night, and he said, I'm an Evernote note taker, for better or for worse, and it's not keeping up with me. But we do have digital notes now that can be indexed and searched in pretty basic ways. And we still struggle. We have generations of these tools. But research from Microsoft shows that the average employees spend about a quarter of a typical knowledge worker's day is just looking for and consolidating information. And we only find what we're looking for about half the time. We took an analog idea and we digitized it. But the problem is we need to look further forward. There's a great book called The Fusion of Innovations by Everett Rogers. And he talks about these limitations that we have. Old ideas are the main mental tools that individuals utilize to assess new ideas and give them meaning. Individuals cannot deal with an innovation except on the basis of the familiar. And the reality is, especially today, especially in this challenging market and economy and everything else that we're dealing with, it's not enough to just capture information. It has to be found when it's needed, and new approaches are necessary. So that quote from Vannevar Bush from 1945 came from a visionary essay that he wrote in The Atlantic. It was called As We May Think. And it was in this that he really looked at the problem and conceived of what a technology-based solution would be. Now, you have to remember in 1945, we had computers. And computers were people. Computing was a job. It wasn't a machine. It was semi-skilled labor. And it was not long after that we got our first general-purpose digital computers, but they were pretty rudimentary. So he was imagining what the world might look like in the future without the benefit of digital storage and silicon chips and everything else. He conceived of this machine called a Memex. And it was entirely mechanical, but it wasn't just a storage system. It cross-linked information. It was a proto-mechanical knowledge graph. And these ideas that he wrote in that essay, most people just said, wow, this guy's crazy. But a handful of people said, this guy is brilliant. And we want to do something with these ideas. Now, one of the leading exponents in this space was a guy named Ted Nelson in the 1960s. Ted Nelson coined the term hypertext and hypermedia, and he kind of continued to build on these ideas that information is fundamentally interconnected in all these different dimensions, in all these different ways. The word that he coined was intertwingled. He said intertwingularity is not generally acknowledged. People keep pretending they can make things deeply hierarchical or categorizable or sequential when they can't. Everything is deeply intertwingled. But my friends, we live in the future. The future is here. And we are standing on the shoulders of these giants. And we have access to a new generation of personal knowledge management tools. You know, we have Rome Research, we have Obsidian, we have LogSeq, we have a number of these tools. And these are just a few. And they give us so much more than just digital notebooks. Now, I want to caution you. This is one of those things that can become a rabbit hole. If you are not careful, you're going to spend all your time obsessing about the tools and the integration of the tools and the configuration of the tools to the detriment of the benefit that we actually want to get. And I see this all the time. We go down this rabbit hole. We focus entirely on meta work because, to quote Neil Ford, meta work is always more interesting than real work. And we build these Rube Goldberg devices of tools and technologies and integration suites and all of these different things. And maybe there is value over some simplicity and finding that balance in there. Maybe there's wisdom in finding this balance. Now, maybe not quite as simple as Apple Notes, but there's something here. And so I want to start you I want to get you to a starting place today. And the goal is to find something that works. The goal is mindset over tool set. To quote Tiago Forte, author of Building a Second Brain, he said, most important of all, don't get caught in the trap of perfectionism, insisting that you have to have the perfect app with a precise set of features before you take a single note, because the value is compounding. It's about having a reliable set of tools that you can depend on, knowing that you can always change them later. And this is why I'm starting with a tool called LogSeek. Because the reality is today there's an app or a website or a platform for just about anything. There are even apps out there that by design do absolutely nothing. But when it comes to being a professional who is learning, thinking, and creating all day, this is the app that I cannot live without. It is a privacy-first, open-source, local file-based, standards-based notebook and personal knowledge graph. And it's called LogSeek. Now, this is a good place to start because at the end of the day, all of your notes are just markdown files in your file system. So you can always move them somewhere later on, but this is a fantastic place to start, and it is a deeply powerful tool. Now, when you log in to LogSeek for the first time, you're going to be dropped into the journal. Let me see if I can actually get this window. Aha! Into here. You'd get dropped into the journal with today's date. Oh, look at that, May 30th, 2024. And when you're just looking at that, it doesn't look too powerful. But there is, to kind of go back to what I was getting at earlier, there is beauty in simplicity. So everything starts in the journal. And I'm going to show you what it looks like when you get it set up. You download the application, you point it to a folder, it scaffolds a new graph, and everything that you keep is in here. So let's actually just sort of dive in a little bit. I want to give you just the quickest little overview of this so you can kind of see this tool in action and what it means. And number one, this is the powerful thing. So it starts as a journal, a daily devlog, whatever you want to call it. It opens up a new page daily. It always structures the page as an outline. So this is a parent block. This is a child block. This is a child block and a parent block because it is a parent of this. It starts as a journal page. It always structures this as an outline. Every item, every block is time-stamped, it is directly addressable, and it is parent-child relationship aware. And once you understand the consequences of these facts, you'll realize that you don't ever need another kind of page in your notes. So that's one of the first reasons that I love this tool. But the second one is the journal's great, but tomorrow it's going to say May 31st. The day after that, it's going to be June 1st. And these things are just going to scroll off the page and into the memory hole, as George Orwell would have said. But this is where everything changes, because if I link it, and linking it just involves wrapping the term or the phrase or the concept in double square brackets. If I link it, I cannot lose it. It is trivial to link any block to a term or a page or a tag. You just put the term in square brackets, hit enter, and if I click on this hyperlink term, because I'm not linking to pages anymore. I don't care about pages. I don't need to know what pages exist to be able to create a link. I'm just connecting a concept. And if that concept doesn't exist, it creates a page. And that's great, an empty page, but when I jump into this page, I get my empty page, and right down here, I have linked references. So it is discovering, and it is discovering and curating every reference to that concept in this parent-child aware thing. So I see the root, which is May 30th. I see my concept, and then all the children underneath it. Now, sometimes for people, this creates anxiety. Because, okay, what do I need to link? I'm going to link everything. I'm going to link every single word. I'm going to link every single phrase. I'm going to link every single whatever. But just let these things emerge. Let the structure emerge. Because if today you're talking about Sybase or SQL or Oracle or LogSeq or any of these things, and it didn't occur to you to link that. And then in the future, you say, oh, I wish I would have linked that. As soon as you create that node in your graph, it's going to retroactively find all of the unlinked references. So it's going to find all of these other references. Like I didn't link this on these elements. May 17th, the last time I gave this presentation, it looks like, I talked about blocks, but I never linked it. And it's going and finding all of these things in my history. Now, if I have some kind of interesting piece that I want to surface and make visible, I'm going to right-click on that bullet, and I'm going to go copy that block as a reference or an embed, and then I can kind of curate these individual concept pages like a wiki. But the beautiful thing here with these linked references is that as soon as you're linking something, you have freed yourself from the burden of finding your notes, because now your notes will find you. As you're taking your notes and you realize, hey, this thing is connected to that thing, you don't have to stop, context switch, go to a different page in a different editor and make that note over there. You just connect it. Because nothing is ever just one thing. It's this idea, Ted Nelson's idea of intertwingularity. Now, another thing that happens, our learning resources become intertwingled. So one of the things that I can simply do here is, a lot of the commands can be accessed from a pop-up command palette in the editor. If I type a /, I get these things. I can upload an asset, and it's going to give me a file browser dialog. And let's see if I have a PDF laying around that I can point to. And I probably have one of these somewhere of actual slides from this presentation, probably in my desktop detritus folder, where these things ultimately end up. But yeah, let's just grab that. This is a PDF from a different session that I give. So I select that file, I enter it, and now I have my PDF. It copies that file locally into my graph. It is part of that. Of course, if I click on this, it's going to give me the PDF that I have here. And anything that I think is valuable, whether it's a text or whether it's a figure, I can highlight this. I can copy this highlight, a reference to this highlight. I can paste that in my notes. And now I have that highlight with the text. And of course, I can write my notes in context of that highlight. And of course, if I ever need to, this is another hyperlink, because that will take me right back to the highlight that I just created. I can do the same thing with online videos, digital videos. I can just type / and I can say embed video URL. I can put a YouTube video in there, and then I can start taking notes as I'm watching this video. And as I'm watching that video, another really useful command to have in here is embed YouTube timestamp. And it will just capture the current timestamp of the video that I'm looking at. So again, I have my notes with their source to the timestamp of the video that I'm watching. So our learning resources become intertwingled. Other things become very interesting here as well, because certainly I want to keep a lot of things in my second brain, but there are things that I need to keep in my hot storage, in my immediate cache, that I want to repeat, do spaced repetition learning to keep those on the tip of my tongue. And any parent-child block can become a flashcard. I type the hash and card, and now I have flashcards. So the parent-child is the question, the child there, the child is the answer, and I can access my flashcards in here, or I can query for cards that are linked to a certain topic. So I can type in curly cards, and then just the link that I'm using. So I can say cards, I can just say block. And this will give me all of the cards that are relating to whatever session that I have in here. But I should probably link that a little more thoroughly. But either way, you can take anything, put that into a block, you've got flashcards. A few other things that are really wild is I can manage all my tasks in context. So maybe my journal, I'm in here, and something comes up, I get an action item in a meeting, or anything else. I need to remember to do the thing. right? I have a block there. That's cool, but that's not actionable. But I'm on Windows and Linux most of the time, so if I hit Control-Enter, the word later pops up because I use the later now done syntax. You can configure this. You can use to do, doing, done, whatever that is. But as soon as I Control-Enter, that turns into a task. And if I Control-Enter again, it changes the status to in progress. And if I Control-Enter again, it marks that as done. And while something is in progress, it is also running a timer and tracking my time, which is super useful. But some other really wild things happen with tasks. We can start using tasks in the context of linking. So for example, if I need to do this thing tomorrow, I can just link that, and I have a shortcut for tomorrow that's built into that command palette. I can link that to tomorrow, and that means tomorrow, when I see tomorrow's journal page for the first time, it immediately shows up that I'm basically posting something to me in the future. I can link projects to dates. I can link projects or tasks to projects. I can link them to all sorts of things. And there's a lot of powerful tools in here that allow you to kind of query and aggregate these things, because I don't want to think about where to put things, because the idea of putting things in specific places is a distraction, because everything is deeply intertwined. And that's why I love this tool, that it just accumulates everything in all the relevant buckets for me all the time. That structure emerges. A few other things that are really wild. Anytime you're using this and you say, hey, I've done this exact thing 3 or 4 times, because I like, when I get a tool like this, I like to systematize routine workflows. To another great Jessica Care quote, if I always have to do it, I should never have to do it. And so I like to systematize these things. So a lot of times, I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to create some prompts. So maybe this is prompt 1 for my daily journal. Maybe this is prompt 2. All of this is just markdown at the end of the day in here. I can kind of add these prompts. And if I have a whole system of these, at any point, I can say, you know what? I don't want to have to create this over and over again. I'm going to right-click on this bullet, and I'm going to make this into a template, and then I can call that template back any time that I want to. So one of the templates that I use a lot, I use a few, and all of these are available on my GitHub. You can download the tool. You can download these, take notes throughout the conference, and have all of the knowledge accumulate in all of the buckets where it has value. But if I just go in here, type the / and template, it's going to give me a list of all the templates I have. I have templates for one-on-ones. I have templates for recurring meetings, for my team members that I work on, for projects, for conference talks that I'm attending and taking notes for areas, for books that I'm reading, resources, things like that. But I have a daily journal template, and this is how I start my day, every day. I have a cup of coffee, and I sit down, and I bring up this template, and it starts like this. My goal, I want to focus my day, because so much time is burned just trying to figure out what am I going to do next. So what is my goal? And then I give myself 3 strategic, measurable, actionable, time-bound targets for the day that are realistic. And then in this notes activity section, I just capture my notes for the day. I just link things as I need to. I've got a few other prompts, like for things that I don't really know where to categorize yet. I throw them in the inbox. I look at them later. Things don't forget. And at the end of the day, I do a little bit of reflection. Lessons learned, gratitude, and my wins for the day. I just sort of capture these things. And it's all just Markdown. And so ultimately, this tool, it's not just an editor, it's not just an outlining tool or a to-do manager or an integration of these things. It is a platform for solving knowledge management problems, and it's a really interesting approach, if you ask me. Basically, take a bunch of Markdown files in a directory structure, create an opinionated index on the list appearing in those files. You add specific special semantics to things like later for tasks or key : value for block or page properties. It builds a graph database under the hood. It makes it queryable with a simple query syntax and data log, and it will render the results of the queries directly in the editor, which allows editing of the results to pass back through to the underlying data on disk. And it's more and more remarkable the more you play with it and the more you learn about it. So I want to jump back into here because it looks like we've got a lot to get through in the next 13 minutes. So a couple things to do this, to make this actionable. Number one of the simplest things you can do is just start keeping a daily devlog. I'm convinced that keeping a daily devlog will make you a better developer, a better leader, better architect, and it allows you to internalize your learnings forever, discover unconscious patterns that you want to eliminate, have a better time writing your annual self-evaluation every year. Now, most people if they start a daily devlog practice, it's going to fizzle out after a couple of weeks at most, because it's not about what you write, it's about what you do with it. So we want to clarify our thinking, we want to build long-term awareness, we want to discover these patterns, but what do we ultimately write down? And the short answer is whatever your instincts tell you might be useful later. I keep track of pull requests. I journal interactions with people. Anytime I journal an interaction, I link it to that person's note. I can see who I've collaborated with, what we've worked on together. So let's look at 6 things that you can put in here. Number 1 is any interesting learning resources. Anything you find as you go around, hey, this is a really useful article, this is a really useful blog post, this is a really insightful tutorial or video. Capture these things. Underneath it, throw a few of the salient points. Link it in a meaningful way so you could discover these things in the future. Any ideas or musings for the future? I write a lot of conference talks, and my old way of doing this was, hey, I'm giving a talk at Craft in May, but it's only January. I got tons of time. And between January and May, the old Michael would say, oh, that's a good idea. I'm sure I'm going to remember that when the time actually comes to put pencil to paper. And then before I know it, it's May 28th, and it's 11 o'clock at night, and I have an empty slide deck, and all of those ideas, those wonderful ideas I had were gone. But now they get captured, they accumulate, and I can just look at them and organize them and create something valuable. Any pull requests, I keep track of any pull request I submit, approve, or merge. A lot of the work product I deliver in my consulting practice goes through Git, and so pull requests are almost like a personal task level Kanban. And it helps me reconnect a story for the week. Personal interactions. I take a note of every personal interaction, scheduled or otherwise, and I just look at these from time to time. I build a library of the people I've worked with on what we collaborated on together, and I start learning the patterns that emerge there. That, oh, this person is really spectacular here or there. Project actions, I keep a running narrative of things that I'm working on. It could be at the product level or the story level. It just depends. And anytime I get an interruption, I make a note of what I've been doing and what I'm going to do next, and then I can go away and then just pick up right on that continuation. Oh, and guess what I use to inform my daily stand-up updates? It's like right there for me. Perplexing puzzled. I make a note of anything that surprises me. Could be strange program behaviors, blockers, production issues, anything unexpected. And I review these periodically, and I ask myself, how can I use what I've learned to improve my mental models? So hopefully this list gets you past the starting line. Do this faithfully for several months and see where it takes you. But that surprising thing, the surprises are really powerful. And Llewellyn Falco, who is here, he's speaking as well. I was talking to him about this, and he said, I used to think journaling was a lot of work that had very little value because it was never read, but this changed my mind. A couple things that I do as well as part of this process that you can do is I distill on a regular basis. I create a weekly 2 or 3 paragraph summary. I time box this to 5 minutes typically, 10 minutes at the top. But this is kind of the process that I go through. This is valuable. Try it, see where it takes you. And if not, do this from time to time. But basically my distillation process is this. Every week, I read the day's log, and I try to read it, not just skim it. I try to experience the day as it happened. I write a summary of my key activities for the week. I create a monthly review note as well. I look at my weeklies and I sort of summarize those up. And as I'm going through, I bold what resonates. I highlight answers to questions that I kind of gave to myself to answer that month, or in all of that. I'll write a quick paragraph, an executive summary. And again, these just compose into bigger deliverables that I can use in promotion efforts, in kind of reports for clients, in putting presentations together, mentoring other developers that are early in their journey. And a lot of what I've talked about so far focuses on the journal, but we also have a lot of pages in there. So when do we go from the journal to pages? There's a great YouTube channel. I think they renamed it recently, and I can't remember the name of it. It was called One Stuttering Mind. It is linked in the slides, and I'm sure there's some way I can actually upload these slides to make available to people. So I will figure that all out. But I put pages for recurring meetings, processed information, larger write-ups, and this thing, Para. Let me introduce Para to you very quickly, because that's the second piece here. Because we're not just creating a notebook now. We're building a second brain, and a second brain gives us superpowers. But what does this look like in practice? Well, Tiago Forte wrote that book, Building a Second Brain, and it has truly been transformational for me. That was probably one of the most influential books I read in 2022. that really started to shape how I do this. And he gave us 2 methodologies, 2 acronyms to kind of to take a philosophy for how we organize our notes, no matter what tool we're using, no matter whether you're using OneNote or Evernote or Obsidian or Logseq or Apple Notes or anything else. So CODE is the workflow for personal knowledge management. It stands for capture, organize, distill, and express. And it really boils down to this. Capture what resonates. A big mistake a lot of people make is we try to capture too much. We try to take too many notes. But the solution is keep only what resonates in a trusted place that you control, leave the rest aside. These are your trusted knowledge assets. There's a great approach to kind of simplify what we're doing. And that is sort of this, I call this the Marie Kondo for note-taking. Does it inspire me? Is it useful? Is it personal? Is it surprising? Surprise is a really important signal for telling us our mental model went wrong. When we are surprised, that means our mental model went wrong. And so when something surprises me, I try to capture these things and try to understand how to improve my mental model over time. But basically, does it fit into this criteria? Otherwise, thank it and set it aside. The second one is organize. We want to save for actionability. And I'm not worried about where to physically put things because everything in my knowledge graph is intertwined. But when we organize for action, it gives you a tremendous sense of clarity. So consider new information in terms of its utility. How is this going to help me with something I'm doing in the future? And just link it. But link it to what? This is where para comes in. Para is another philosophy for organizing things. It gives you a logical place for any note. You can show by its home how actionable it is. It's simple, it's easy to maintain. You can implement it with any tool, and it's called para. It stands for projects, areas, resources, and archives. So projects are basically buckets of goal-oriented tasks with fixed deadlines. So it could be stories you're working on, operational incidents that you're working, or conferences you're attending. It has a start. Projects have a start and an end. And in fact, I do have a template in that graph for conferences just to capture all of my notes and the slides and everything else. Now, projects have a start and an end. Areas might have a start, but they don't have a defined end. So areas are buckets of goal-oriented, ongoing activity with expected quality standards. Like when I was building my CRM, it was a project. It had a finish line. I shipped it. It went to production. We brought the first customers online. And the project is done. Now it's an area because it's something that I have to deal with every single day. The third one is resources. Resources are buckets of otherwise useful and interesting things. This is where I put code snippets, links to useful websites, things I've learned about programming languages or libraries or frameworks. And resources I come back to from time to time, and I'll curate resource pages, sort of like a wiki. And the last one is archives, anything inactive from the previous 3 areas. So that's para. And so we've got capture, organize. The third is distill. Just as we're doing this, make an effort to kind of go through an ongoing distillation process. Distill your notes down to their essence, the heart and soul of what the idea is trying to capture. A really valuable thing here is to think of yourself not as a taker of notes, but reframe that you are a giver of notes. You're giving your notes to your future selves. And the last one is show your work. Create something. Information becomes knowledge, personal, embodied, verified only when we put it to use. So the express stage emphasizes shifting as much of your effort from consuming to creating. And the last part I'm going to talk just briefly about is kind of organizing your professional life using a tool like this for teams. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of markdown files in a directory structure. So synchronization is super easy. I have OneDrive, I have Dropbox, people use Google Drive. I push all of this to GitHub. I push all my markdown files to GitHub. And a lot of organizations that I work with, we use team graphs. We have shared team graphs that we jump back and forth from. And the team graph stuff is extremely powerful. And we all use things like Confluence, and maybe you've got company wikis and things like that, and they're of limited utility because to link something, to intertwingle your information, you have to know the URL of a page that you want to connect to. But here we just link concepts. To quote Vannevar Bush, he said, "Our ineptitude at getting at the record is largely caused by the artificiality of systems of indexing. When data of any sort are placed in storage, they're filed alphabetically or numerically, and information is found, when it is, by tracing down from subclass to subclass. Having found one item, moreover, one has to reemerge and re-enter on a new path." So if you're just capturing things and linking to concepts and letting those concepts accumulate all of that information, there's really powerful things to be had there. Now, of course, if you look at the logseq docs, docs.logseq.com or .org, I forget, it looks an awful lot like logseq, and that's not a stylistic choice. It's because I can take a team graph that we can share and contribute to and build this shared body of knowledge, and I can publish that directly into a single-page application. There's a GitHub action. Every time we push to origin, to our main branch of our shared graph, it just republishes that entire thing, and I get all these benefits, all these links, all of this, and it is a very different process. And so do reach out, because I would love to show you more of these things in action. But I want to give you enough introduction, personal, team, methodologies, philosophies that allow you to kind of take these things and run with it. The only thing I will say is beware IP. Remember that anything that touches your work computer could be the property of the company. I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV. But I use the same digital knowledge management practices in my personal life and my work life, and I keep the two apart. So if you want to play with this, I've got 2 links in the slide. My demo graph that has all my templates, all my workflows, a bunch of self-guided exercises that allow you to set up this foundation. It is at github.com/Carducci/logseq-demograph, and you can download the tool at logseq.com. And if you can't install it, it even runs as a progressive web app in the browser. Powerful stuff. I've got more links in the slides. Of course, the slides are available in that graph as well. And I know we're over time by just about 30 seconds, and I'm stunned that we kept it so tight. But with that, I will say thank you very much.
You can stay, you can stay.
All right.
As an MC, I have a chance to give, like, for 1-2 questions, some space. So first question, can you use logseq on your mobile? And
Yes.
do you use it there personally?
Yes. So yes, you can. If you are using the free open source, it can be a little challenging to manage sync. I found you can do this with Google Drive or iCloud, but they have a SaaS option that does all the synchronization for you. They have apps in the iOS and the Android store, and it's very powerful. But for me, I prefer the keyboard, so I still do most of my stuff on a machine.
Okay, another one. How do you do PKM at work where you are not allowed to install your own software and access your private knowledge base?
So definitely that I do that through the browser. So if you go to logseq.com, I think it's demo.logseq.com, the entire application will run in a browser. The only limitation is you can't install plugins, but you give it access to a folder where all your files are, and you don't even need to install the software. It's a PWA or a standalone application.
That's cool. Okay, now I would like to close it. I would like to ask our helper